Hello and welcome everyone. Today at 10Web's interview series, we are going to host Kimberly Jimenez. She is an experienced entrepreneur and marketing expert who, according to her words, strives to teach entrepreneurs how to connect with their dream clients online, increase their revenue, and make a bigger impact on the world, all while having some serious fun. Today, Kimberly is going to share with us her top content marketing strategies for digital agencies.
This video was brought to you by 10Web, a WordPress platform to get all your websites an automatic PageSpeed score of 90+. Sign up for a 14-day free trial and experience true automation.
So, hey Kimberly, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
To start things off, can you please tell us more about your career and how you started your YouTube channel?
Yeah, actually, it's a pretty weird story. I never envisioned myself being an entrepreneur, let alone going into marketing at all. I'm not the kind of entrepreneur who just is like born an entrepreneur, the kind that like starts a lemonade stand and hustles at like 12 years old. That was not me. I come from a background where my parents are academics. I was born and raised in a college campus. And so my goal was always to work my way up the corporate ladder. And I was in school to be a dietitian and met my husband. Back then he was my boyfriend, now my husband, who is a born entrepreneur. I mean, the guy just cannot be employed. So we started, progressing in our relationship, and I wanted to be a good girlfriend, spend more time with him. He was into this whole business thing and had launched a college startup, was a moving and furniture installation service. And so started doing some marketing because I thought, well, maybe I can get his Facebook page going and maybe we can get together and do something like a website. Had really no idea what I was doing, had just been taking some business classes in school and some marketing classes, and decided let's give it a try, and fell in love with it. We actually ended up growing that company to multiple seven figures in just a couple of months, and it took off. So our friends started asking, hey, like, what are you doing? And I decided to just launch a YouTube channel and a blog because I was getting the same questions over and over and over again. Like, how do I get my Facebook page set up? And how do I add a Facebook like button on my website, which was like the hot thing back then in 2012, before the newsfeed existed or there were any ads in the actual newsfeed. We were running ads in the right-hand column. So like my OG agency digital marketers know what that's like. And so that's kind of how it evolved. I started getting more and more clients on my own and did an internship at a digital marketing agency, which gave me my start, my big break. And from there, I just kind of pivoted my career, dropped out of college, and started working for a student housing company leading their digital marketing department, which was really, really fun. But my heart and soul was with small businesses. And so I left that corporate job, which was kind of my dream job, to start my own company, and the rest is history.
Oh, that's actually quite a story, and it's great to hear that you found your passion and you found it by accident, basically. Yeah, and now you and your husband are growing your business. So, diving directly to the topic of our today's discussion. So, why do you think is content marketing this important, and how businesses can benefit from it?
Yeah, I love that question. And I feel like as we look at content marketing from the standpoint of profitability, as we look at it from the standpoint of a tool, I think that kind of changes, right? The intention. Content marketing is so hyped. There's so many people that are like, you need to be creating more and posting here, and you need to be on Facebook and on Instagram and doing YouTube and blogs, and it can be a lot. I tend to look at content marketing from a different perspective. It's really just a tool in our toolbox as entrepreneurs, a way to communicate with our ideal clients, to attract attention to our brands and companies. And it's a way for us to adapt into the digital world. As we've seen the last decade, content marketing has only gotten more and more and more important. And there's also been a lot of changes, right? Especially during this time, the pandemic. We've seen insane growth as more and more customers are turning to online resources to get their questions answered, their problems solved. And so as modern entrepreneurs, I think content marketing is a very important aspect of our marketing strategy, but only if it's done from the lens of profitability, only if we actually attach purpose to it. I think that it's become such a trendy thing to do. Most people think they have to be on Instagram, or they have to do Facebook, or they have to launch a YouTube channel. And that could not be further from the truth. I think that as content marketing and social media adapts to this new world, as we continue to change and evolve, we have to be really strategic with the way that we employ our time and our resources. And we have to be smarter about how we create content and the way that we go about deploying those strategies. So yes, I think content marketing is extremely important. It provides us with authority. It allows us to build a relationship with people who might not be ready to buy right now, but are willing to consume some of our content, get to know us a little bit better, and prime, right, our ideal audience for the sale. But it has to be done intentionally. We have to add value, but we can't get consumed just in the content side of things. I feel like most entrepreneurs, maybe not most, but too many entrepreneurs really are stuck in the content aspect of content marketing. They forget about the marketing part. So we're just creating and producing for the sake of creating and producing, not really getting anywhere. And so the marketing aspect of it is key. We got to understand why we're doing it to begin with, so that we can deploy it in a way that's profitable and effective.
So you mentioned strategy and also profitability, to look at content marketing from those two perspectives. And what do you think is the best way to do content marketing, and how to incorporate it to your business goals and overall digital marketing strategy?
Yeah, I love this question. And I think really there isn't a perfect strategy or a particular benchmark that every single agency should follow, or every single service provider, or every single entrepreneur. It really comes down to understanding, okay, let's get clear on what it is we're trying to achieve first and foremost. Are we trying to leverage our YouTube channel to get more leads and sales? Is it just an engagement play? Is it an awareness play? Are we trying to use it for SEO? There's so many things that you want to look at, particularly as it pertains to different platforms, and really just starts with why. Why are you doing content marketing? What is it that you're trying to achieve? Are you trying to get more leads, more traffic, more sales? Again, is it a place where you can dive into really building relationships? Do you want to stay top of mind with existing clients so that they purchase from you again? There's so many different ways that you could leverage content marketing. And so simplifying it and making it very specific to your particular business or what your clients want and need is key. We get very distracted with shiny objects, right? Thinking that we have to be on all the platforms and create all the different types of format of content. When in reality, I believe, and I really advocate for this, simplicity is key. If we start trying to leverage every single opportunity that comes our way in terms of getting in front of our ideal clients and creating content, it's easy to burn out, particularly if you're an agency and you're running different client accounts, you're wearing multiple hats, you're kind of in that startup culture. It's a lot. And so when it comes to how do you do content marketing the best possible way, I think it starts with getting really, really clear on what it is you want to accomplish, and then go from there, right? Take one platform or maybe two at most, a primary platform and a supporting platform. Maybe it's Instagram and it's YouTube. Maybe it's your blog and a Pinterest channel. Maybe it's a Facebook page and a podcast. Whatever it is, make sure that you're clear on your why, and then leverage and master that platform. It's easy to get stuck in the, oh, well, we're missing out on TikTok, we're missing out on Snapchat, we're missing out on jumping on Telegram. And those are all amazing tools. But if we're spreading ourselves too thin, if we're not mastering individual platforms, it just becomes a waste of time. You're just trying to do a bunch of things and see what sticks. And really, that's not efficient or effective. So I think the best way of doing content marketing is figuring out where your audience is and finding what format of content makes sense for who you are. There's so many people who are like, listen, I can't be on camera. Like I just have no charisma. I have no interest in getting better at, communicating to an empty room. And I just don't like editing video, or I don't want to find someone that can help me with editing. So what can I do? Well, you can write blogs, or you can jump on a podcast and make sure that however you're leveraging the different platforms, you have at least one supporting platform that leverages discoverability, that allows you to get found. And I don't know if you want me to dive this deep into it, but I think it's important to be aware of that. Like, most of us are stuck in the social media world thinking like, oh, that's the only way of leveraging and getting exposure. And maybe this is different for your agency clients who like totally know the power of SEO and see the potential there in getting discovered. But I think it's so important to leverage search just as much as it is to leverage social and to get discovered and really create content that lives beyond that initial tweet or that initial Instagram post.
Okay, so first of all, you can go to as many details as you want, and I'm absolutely sure that our viewers will also love to learn more on what you are sharing. And a couple of things that you mentioned stick to me. So first of all, you told us to understand our clients better, then to go deeper and understand where they are on the internet, like what channels and what kind of content they would prefer. So what is your go-to way of like doing this research? How do you understand which channel to choose, where you will find more customers for your business? And so basically, what's your process of doing it?
I love that. Okay, so there's two different parts of this process, right? Let's talk about getting to know your ideal clients first, because I think that's the most important vital part or vital aspect. So every single year, we send out a survey to our audience. And this started from the time I had like no one on my list. And like my mom and my boyfriend were the ones who were reading my blog. But I started, when I didn't have an audience, I just started going to where I thought my people were. I was like, okay, so I want to serve small business owners, right? And so I started going to Facebook groups and trying to join forums and reading through the questions that people were asking. And I started paying a lot of attention to the words they were using and noticing the differences between how I would describe a challenge or a problem in my technical terms as the marketing person, and how that differed from how they were describing their challenges and their pain points. So for example, I noticed that they would not call, productivity time management. They used the word productivity. They didn't use words like profitability. They talked about making money. And so those little nuances really stuck to me. And I started just really taking a spreadsheet and writing all the questions that people were asking in Facebook groups, that people were asking in forums. I would talk to my friends in person, and I would try to get as much information in terms of what they were struggling with as I possibly could. And then as my audience started to grow and we started to build an email list and the YouTube channel started growing and the social media community started building, then we started to be more proactive about it. And we would follow Ryan Levesque's method, which I think is so amazing. He talks about the ask method, which is just asking people what is their single biggest challenge, problem, or pain point that is the biggest thing right now for them when it comes to whatever it is that you help them with. In my case, content marketing. And so gathering that data just really helped me understand, okay, these people are in this particular stage of their business. They're really concerned about these particular issues and they're interested learning more about these particular topics. And from there, I started to get in their head, reading their responses. And it's actually something I'm doing actively right now as we're getting ready to launch a new program. So just diving through those answers and being like, wow, what are my assumptions and where was I wrong in assuming some of the things that I was assuming about my audience? But then also, what are some of the things that I can validate and say, yeah, these are my people, right? They're maybe between the growth and the scale stage, they're pre or post revenue, they have a small team or a large team. All those things are really important, not just on the demographic side, but mostly on the psychographic side, really getting to know who they are as people, what their interests are, who makes the final buying decision, right? In my case, I need to get the husband's approval to purchasing some of my programs, because we mostly tend to attract female entrepreneurs, although love my men, love that they're here, and I love that they watch our YouTube channel, but it's one of those things that happens naturally. And so getting that data and being really strategic with doing it consistently, and we're actually ramping that up. We're doing it not just for our main audience, but also our existing client base, and really gathering that feedback, always asking questions really helps. It'll give you so much guidance. And then the other part of this really is just finding where those people are, right? Going to where they hang out. And I think the best way you can do is ask them. But if you don't have an audience yet, or you're kind of in the process of building one, there's so much data online in terms of, for example, what are the demographics on Pinterest? What are the demographics on Facebook? Who normally listens to podcasts? A quick Google search will give you basically all the data that you need to have to make an intelligent decision. And then you just engage and you start exploring that platform. Is that where your audience really is? Is that where they actually, consume content? Are they busy moms, and so they're listening to podcasts versus actually watching on YouTube? All those little things come as part of your engagement in that platform. You can't always think your way through a perfect strategy. You have to execute and do, and you'll learn in that process what is the right path.
So when I was browsing your website a couple of days ago, there was one thing that absolutely got my attention, and let me read this. You had this lead magnet on your landing page: 4 proven steps to monetize your blog and grow a profitable audience on your platform, even if you hate writing like I do and without needing a large audience. So how does this happen?
Okay, so wait, do you mean how do I actually get to that process, or how do I come up with a lead magnet?
Actually, I was asking the first one, but coming up with the lead magnet is also a great question that should be answered.
Okay. So let's take it in steps, and you might have to remind me of the first question just to make sure I don't get off track. But when it comes to lead magnets, it's interesting. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of lead magnets I've created, and probably 70 to 80% of them have flopped. It's just a matter of trying to continue digging deep and perfecting what you put out in the world and seeing what actually sticks. Some of the things that I've created, I've been so surprised at. Why would a content calendar be a template? Why would that be the most popular lead magnet we ever have? That's just so easy to do. But then I would spend, 5 freaking weeks creating an ebook that would completely flop. And so I started learning early on that it just depends on the format, really depends on the type of client you're trying to attract, right? So if you are making sure you want to attract volume and it's a very easy ask, you would create a PDF download, something that's easy to consume, something that's not a huge time commitment. But if you want a higher quality client, and you can use this in different, steps in your particular funnel, at least that's how we use it, then you would have them sign up for an actual webinar or a masterclass or a discovery call or consultation. All of those things kind of have their hierarchy in your funnel and the way that you develop relationships with people. So when someone has just gotten to know us, it's usually through a piece of content. They're reading one of our blogs or watching some of our YouTube channels. And so it's easier to say, hey, here's this template that you can use right away, than it is, hey, let's talk about the 4 proven steps to nailing, right, your blog marketing strategy, even if you hate writing like I do. So it's one of those things where you have to continuously test, gather the feedback, implement it, and then figure out what resonates with your audience. Because at the end of the day, you're never going to know from behind the computer trying to create the perfect thing. You got to get it in front of your customers and your clients and your potential customers and clients, which is your audience, to see what actually sticks. So I think that's the answer to the first question.
So yeah, and the first question was how do you actually monetize a blog without doing any writing? Because my assumption is, even if it's a podcast, you still have to prepare, write some questions, or if you're just reading, you have to write down the material. So how does this happen? Of course, without like stealing all the secrets, so people still download it.
I'm an open book. I'm sorry. You are right. I answered the second question. So here's the first question. So I mentioned, even if you hate writing like I do, it didn't say that you weren't going to do any writing at all.
Okay.
So that's an important distinction. For me, I don't just hate writing. At this point in my career, I don't write my own blogs at all. So I love video. This is my format. I feel more comfortable on video than I do writing. And even though I can write blogs faster, I'm not a good writer. And English is not my first language. So I don't feel comfortable. I always mess it up. And early on in my career, I did write my own blogs, but very quickly I started hiring them out. So at first it was through per project, on a per project basis to someone, on the other side of the world, usually through Upwork or something like Fiverr. So I would start with long form content, like a podcast or like a YouTube video. And then I would have them transcribe that. Back then, it actually had to be done manually. Thank God we have AI tools now that will do it a lot faster. But that's kind of how we've leveraged our blog is, okay, so we'll take a piece of long form content, we'll transcribe it, and then my team will put it in a blog format. So they'll write a very simple introduction, they'll format it to fit the actual video, they'll shrink it because my videos are kind of long and I talk a lot, as you guys can see. So it's one of those things where having the right person to help you with that is really key. If you can outsource it, that would be ideal. And if you can't, then really just leverage your blog as a place where your long form content lives. Even if you just have to sit down for 15 minutes and write a summary, that is worth it to really leverage SEO and to build your own platform instead of just relying on Instagram to create your like long form content and do microblogging, or depending on a podcast or a platform like YouTube, because we just don't own that relationship. We don't own the content that we produce there. And so having a backup and always coming back to creating your own content, or at least publishing on your own site, I think is imperative.
So you mentioned the importance of doing different tests and understanding which one works for your audience. So I guess the next natural question that will come to everyone's mind is like, how do you measure the success of content marketing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, we're going back to our purpose and our objective, right? So for me, the way that you would run this in a digital agency might be different than if you're a solopreneur. And so when I was partnered in a digital agency, we would really focus on running it through a cycle of campaigns. So we had our kind of sprints and marathons, if you will, where our content that was consistently being pushed out happened once a week, and it was very rinse and repeat kind of process, right? We had clear understanding of the audience we're trying to reach. We did a bunch of research to figure out what particular topics would actually resonate with them, and then what keywords we were going to be leveraging for SEO, how we're going to turn that into social, etc. And we just produced one piece of long form content a week. We published it on the blog and we distributed it. But when you're doing sprints, for example, it's really great to have a promotional calendar that will coincide with your content marketing, and really looking at themes as you build awareness for whatever it is you want to sell. So if you're doing a big push to have a client acquisition campaign, and maybe perhaps you're going after a very specific niche or a specific market. For example, in the agency I was a part of, we were hitting up a really weird niche. It was like hot tub dealers. And that was like very specific because we saw that they were being underserviced. And so the CEO was like, listen, we need to go after this particular set of people, and we need to create a campaign around it. So we started creating assets that would answer a lot of the questions that they would have, simple things like, what are 5 profitable ways that you can market a hot tub on Facebook? And we would start creating these series of content pieces that we would then turn into micro content. We would put some ad money behind and promote it. So then at the end of that marketing campaign, we actually linked it to an offline event. And we went to a conference and met all these hot tub dealers in person. But the whole idea was, let's get in front of this particular set of people before we meet them in person. So then the actual closing of the sale will be easier. And that's exactly how it worked out. We started getting our name out there. By the time we met them in person, they already knew about us, and we had already worked with one or two other clients that could vouch for our agency. And it was a much easier process because then we were able to create a very customized service package for that particular audience and actually charge a much higher fee because we were doing marketing that was specific and strategic to their niche. And so I think that that's kind of how you can go about it in two different ways, right? Like you could have marketing campaigns with content marketing that have a particular purpose, a sprint, if you will. And then you have your long-term goals, whether that's to get to a certain point of leads every single month, whether that's to really track how many people are actually converting from your blog or your podcast or whatever platform you use into initial discovery calls or whatever it is that you offer on the front end of your service. I think tracking that in something simple as simple as a spreadsheet every month and sitting down and looking at, okay, these are the leads, these are the calls that we booked. Where did these people come from? Can we ask them? Do we have a place that we can actually track this information? Is really easy to do. Doesn't have to be this like, oh, we're going to add UTM codes to every single post we ever publish on the internet. Let's start simple and then really get advanced from there.
So you mentioned a couple of very great strategies, and I'm sure they worked brilliantly for you. But usually when I'm researching any kind of new information, the struggle I face is there is not enough information for B2B companies, more specifically like digital agencies, no matter what service they provide, web development, marketing, design. So I would also like to focus a little bit specifically on them. So what do you think are the best strategies for content marketing for these types of businesses?
Okay, I love this question. So we come from a kind of a different perspective. And I think that when it comes to service providers, having run two different service businesses, as well as being partnered in an agency, I think content marketing looks different depending on who your ideal client is. I just mentioned that we were going after local businesses for the most part. We weren't really focused on helping like experts or authors or people who were in the digital marketing space per se. So you want to think about, okay, who am I actually servicing? And maybe you're in a place where your agency just services everyone who has a need for digital marketing or design or whatever it is that you offer your particular service. I think that getting clear on how you're going to market to those different avatars or those different audiences is really important. The positive side of running an agency is that you're going, and this is something that we talk about a lot, you're going after a very unique set of people. So as an agency, you are trying to not necessarily reach the masses. And that's something that most agencies and most entrepreneurs don't really understand or aren't exposed to, because what we're told is that we need to model influencers. And so we start modeling all the digital marketing strategies that most influencers are leveraging instead of what entrepreneurs actually need. And so it's great that we take good things from the influencer space. I have nothing against influencers. I think they're amazing, mad respect. We service them. So I'm not trying to be derogatory, but there's a clear distinction there. As influencer marketing has become more and more popular, it's really influenced the private sector and businesses. And so we start chasing after things that don't actually add to the bottom line of the business, whether it's trying to blow up our Instagram account, whether it's trying to make sure that we have X amount of downloads or X amount of subscribers. At the end of the day, those are really good things. They're part of our marketing strategy, but they're not necessarily what's actually going to attract an ideal client and help us get that contract signed. So at the end of the day, you want to think about, okay, how can we be most effective without necessarily thinking that we have to have this insane amount of audience, like this huge group of people that follow us. Because at the end of the day, service providers are playing a quality game over a quantity game. We don't need that many leads to close a client. We don't need that many clients to have a 6 or a 7-figure agency. We're really running a quality game. And so oftentimes what I see in the space is that agencies in particular feel an extra pressure to have this massive following just to flex and say, oh, this is like, we know what we're doing. And that pressure comes from a lot of their own clients thinking that that's what they need in order to succeed. And so I think that we need to start A, educating our clients better, and B, modeling a better system. We have to go after quality. So as you're crafting your content marketing strategy, as you're looking at what is actually going to work for your agency, determine who you're actually servicing. And maybe you don't need to do as much content as you actually think, because that particular set of group of people, for example, hot tub dealers, they might not be glued on YouTube. They might just be hanging out on Facebook. And so you're out there creating the most extensive campaign possible, but is it actually working? Is that who you're actually targeting? So I really want to start challenging the notion that, particularly as marketers, as service providers, we need to have this insanely huge audience. At the end of the day, authority and showcasing results is what's going to attract the highest amount of leads and clients that are quality. So if you can go out there and create content that really shows your ideal client that you are the ideal person, that you know how to get them results, that's going to go so much further than just having a ton of Instagram followers and this like influencer style brand. So that would be my first thing, is like, how can your content differentiate yourself? How can you actually build authority and show your client that you know exactly what you're talking about before they even step a foot on your door or call you on the phone? You want to really get through the objections they might have before they even have it, and leverage the content as a primer to closing a contract, instead of just creating content for the sake of creating content or answering every single question that your clients bring up, which is something that most agencies and most creators, particularly in the service space, get wrong. They're just going after how-to videos and how-to tutorials, which are helpful, but they tend to attract a lot of DIYers. And who you're trying to attract is an audience that wants that done for them. So shifting your content into adding a little bit more about changing their preconceived notions, busting myths, changing their belief systems. Now you start differentiating yourself from the rest of YouTube influencers or Instagram influencers. And that starts making a big difference in terms of the quality of leads and the quality of audience that you start attracting. So I'm sorry, this is a very long response to your question, but I hope it's making sense.
It absolutely does. And another thing I noticed agencies focus on is blogging and SEO. So how do you think it changed through the years, and what's its state right now?
Wow, that's a great question. I think that it's an interesting kind of journey we've gone through the last 10 years, at least. Of course, algorithms have changed, lots of different things happening there between the rules and the basics of SEO. But at the end of the day, I think we are heading into a return to social, like SEO, and really making it more mainstream and more of something that people are actually interested in. I think that after last year and just seeing insane amount of censorship, lots of division, at least here in the West, so many new policies coming in, particularly motivated by political ideologies, lots of disruption in the social media space, and not necessarily for the better. I think more and more and more entrepreneurs are waking up to the idea that, okay, I need to start creating more content in written format that actually is searchable, that creates that discoverability factor, not just slaving on Instagram to try to get, however many amount of views on Reels, or going on TikTok, and all those things, again, important, but not really what necessarily creates results long term. So I think that you're going to start seeing more and more. I think it's going to take a couple of years, but I can see the tide shifting now, where we're looking at more and more entrepreneurs who are going to need that kind of service and are going to want the latest strategies. So I think it would be really smart for agencies to keep talking about search, to start thinking and showing their clients through their content marketing the differences of what they can accomplish via search versus social, and how they need to be integrating both strategies. And I think that starts by you actually walking your talk, right? Demonstrating how that can be done with your own content. So I think it's changed tremendously throughout the years, but particularly as it pertains to blogging, the growth of the blogging space has differed depending on the niche in the market. For example, you'll see a lot of people, particularly in my demographic, moms really enjoy Pinterest and read blogs religiously. I know that I do, but in terms of mainstream media and just social media in general, I think that most people feel like blogs are outdated and no one reads a blog. They would rather listen to a podcast or watch a video on YouTube. And that's just not true depending on the niche that you're in. So I do definitely think that blogging is alive and well and profitable. It's just a matter of, okay, let's leverage it to the max. Let's adapt, because personally, I love leveraging YouTube and video and podcast, but the blog, again, is like that foundational element in my marketing strategy. And I think it should be for most agencies as well. I think we're going to continue to see a bigger push for more SEO, not just in the traditional blogging space, but we're going to see more and more podcast hosts not podcast hosts, but, I guess it's hosts, the companies that host podcasts start creating and giving us more and more tools to enable discoverability, enable search. I think one of the biggest missed opportunities that Facebook has had is not becoming more search friendly. It's crazy to me that you can't type into Facebook, like, I don't know, jewelry store near me, and have a bunch of different pages pop up. But that's the beauty of search. And I think that a lot of us are going to continue understanding the value of search versus social and leveraging it to grow in the future.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. And for example, Pinterest is 100% leveraging no matter what you search. If you search images, obviously, many Pinterest results come up, bringing a lot more additional traffic to people who post those images. But maybe for Facebook, it's more of a privacy issue.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But then if you have like a public Facebook page, there's no reason why that content couldn't be searchable if it's from a business. So I totally agree with you, but Pinterest isn't that different than, let's say, a public Facebook profile. So it's one of those things where like they tried doing it. I remember when they had the open graph years and years, I think that was like 2014. And they decided it just didn't work the way they expected, I guess, and they removed it. But I do understand your point. And I think it would be weird if everything was searchable on Facebook. That would not be good. But I think at least the content that is from business pages, there should be like a setting. Yeah, let's make all of our content searchable. Then great.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Again, Twitter does this, Pinterest does this, so why not Facebook? Anyway, right. It's not for us to decide.
No, it's not.
Okay, so a lot has changed in the last couple of years. So what do you think are like top 5 essential elements of a content marketing strategy in 2021?
Okay, I love that. So this is going to sound very basic, but the reality is that common sense isn't always common practice. And I like going back to fundamentals because fundamentals are what normally gets us results. Yes, we love all the high-end like hacks and strategies. That's awesome, but they don't normally work long-term if we don't have the foundational. So I think number 1, you really want to, again, go back to your purpose, right? What is it that you want to achieve? That's step number 1. And then After you've delineated that and you're clear on that particular purpose, then you want to identify who your people are and get very specific. We talked about really interviewing people or doing surveys or figuring out what Facebook groups they belong to and what questions they're asking. Digging just a little bit deeper makes such a big difference in the way that you really craft your message, that I think that if we just kind of took a step back, maybe stopped doing so much in terms of content marketing and became a little bit more strategic with understanding who our client is and what they actually care about, it would go such a long way. So I think that's number 2, is just really identify who your people are. And then step 3 is going into research. And this is the part where I think a lot of digital marketers and agency owners are familiar with the research part, right? They do this for their clients. They understand how to ideally deploy a particular marketing campaign. But it's different when you do it for a client, at least it was for me, than when you do it for your own agency. All of a sudden, it just kind of becomes a little bit sticky and a little uncomfortable. And so I think getting past that is something that we have to do through practice. So the research part is where you just validate what you've figured out from your audience. Yes, maybe, 2% of people are asking a particular question. Is that actually something that's searchable? Is that something that you can easily optimize with SEO, whether you are creating a YouTube, channel, or you're doing Pinterest, or you're doing a blog? Just leveraging that particular aspect of research, you got to get under the hood, understand what people are actually asking about, but then frame it in a way that is discoverable, because there's sometimes a disconnect there, right? People might be really interested in learning about, for example, Instagram marketing, but what is actually searchable on YouTube might be like Instagram marketing for beginners, or whatever the particular long form keyword is. So research is really key. And then the creation aspect is just having, that's the next step. Step 4 is having a great workflow. Understanding how it is that you want to leverage your time and your resources is really key. And so I, every single day, talk to service providers and marketers who are burnt out when it comes to their content marketing. They're usually servicing so many clients that their business comes last. And they don't really do marketing consistently. And so they go through a feast or famine cycle where they have a ton of clients and they're super busy, and then kind of business slows down and things are kind of at a halt. So you want to figure out what your workflow needs to be, whether it means that you're going to, again, make it very simple, like I do, where I start out with a long form piece of content, like a podcast or a YouTube video, and then I delegate the blog creation to my team. Or you just start leveraging a different format that makes more sense to you. I was just speaking to a service provider who's a close friend of mine. She was like, listen, I used to have a really badass studio for my podcast, and I would have like the fancy microphone and the lighting because I was going to do YouTube and like all the things. And then I realized like life got really busy and my company grew a lot. And now I just have to kind of record as I go. So I'm in the car and I just put my iPhone headphones on and I'm recording on my phone, my podcast, and that's how I get it out. And I haven't noticed any decline in my leads. In fact, people really like that I'm putting out more content because I'm doing it on the fly and I'm just kind of documenting because that's the season of life that I'm in. And that's the season of business that I'm in. And it has worked for me. I'm like, that's awesome. So finding out what the workflow needs to be, making it as easy as possible, but still creating that effectiveness, that consistency, I think is really key. So that's step number 4. It's just creating a workflow that really makes sense for your business, where you're at, and whether you have a team or not is going to make a big difference. So think about those things, how you can make it easier and make it more effective for you. And then the final step is just distribution, and smart distribution, strategic distribution. I like to say that you got to market your marketing. And oftentimes we stop right at the creation process, when we hit that publish button, it's done. And really that's when it starts. So you have to know what your particular strategy is to distribute your content. So for us, we have it outlined and it's very clear on a Trello board where we literally assign individual steps of the content creation process to our team. But when it was just me, I was just assigning myself all the steps and they were in a clear workflow. And I was like, okay, so now that I have the blog ready, I'm going to hit publish, and that's going to get turned into a newsletter, which is also going to be turned into an actual podcast episode. We're going to release that a week later. And then we're going to create these 10 assets that will be smaller clips of the video, snippets of the podcast, teasers, and we're going to deliver that into our own micro content channels, right? The Instagram stories, on IGTV, on Twitter, on Pinterest. And so even if it's just a simple repurposing workflow, a simple distribution workflow, you need to have that. Otherwise, you're going to get really discouraged when you put out all this effort, hit publish, and then no one reads or no one consumes your content. So have a strategy for distribution, make it consistent, and also make sure that it's sustainable so you're not just getting drained. Sometimes people show me their distribution strategy, and I'm like, oh, how is this going? They're like, well, there's 15 steps and I usually can get to 3. I'm like, well, this is too much. You have to simplify and track what is working so that you can do more of that and less of what's not.
So this was actually my last question for today. And thank you so much, Kim. I really appreciate you finding time in your very busy schedule and joining us today and sharing with us all that valuable information. And I'm also 100% sure that everyone who is watching this really appreciates it as well.
No problem. I really appreciate you having me, and thank you so much for the invite. I had such a good time chatting, and I will definitely be following y'all's YouTube channel because what I've seen so far is amazing.
Thank you so much.
This video was brought to you by Timeweb, a WordPress platform to get all your websites an automatic PageSpeed score of 90+. Sign up for a 14-day free trial and experience true automation.